On December 4, 1969, at 4:30 a.m., a state of Illinois carried out what witnesses called a northern lynching. Fred Hampton, a 21-year-old visionary leader, lay unconscious on his bed, drugged by an FBI informant, while police officers pumped 2 bullets into his brain at point-blank range. To the public, it was presented as a shootout with vicious radicals. In the shadow archives, it was a summary execution, planned with the floor plan provided by the FBI. This was not an isolated incident of police overreach, but a node in a global pattern where the state eliminates those who threaten its most vital interests. Today, we go inside the files to examine the mechanics of the third option, the moment when the state stops debating its critics and begins murdering them. We must ask, is the presumption of innocence a reality, or is it a fragile facade that the national security complex shatters whenever it encounters a black messiah or a president who dares to choose peace? The story of Fred Hampton's death provides the clearest smoking gun in the history of domestic state violence. Hampton was a charismatic leader who had achieved the impossible. He was unifying rival street gangs, Latinos, and white activists into a rainbow coalition against the Chicago machine. To J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, this made him a key agitator and a candidate for neutralization under the clandestine COINTELPRO program. To destroy Hampton, the FBI did not rely on the law. They relied on parallel construction. This is a black box arrangement where a secret reality is documented for the state, while a fake reality is specially invented for the courts. The secret reality was that an FBI informant, William O'Neill, had been paid to provide a detailed floor plan of Hampton's apartment, specifically marking the bed where the chairman slept. The fake reality presented to the public was that police were simply serving a search warrant and were met with an NG extended shootout. The floor plan for murder. The FBI provided the local police raiders with a diagram that designated exactly where Hampton and his pregnant fiancée were sleeping. This transformed the raid from a law enforcement action into a tactical ambush. While the police fired 99 shots, the victims fired only a single shot from a falling man whose heart had already been pierced by a police bullet. The state's use of an informant in this scenario is like a magician's trick. The public is mesmerized by the dangerous weapons shown on TV after the raid, while the hand they do and see is the one that drugged the victim and handed the police the map to his bedroom. Inside the FBI's Racial Matters squad, the raid was not a tragedy, but a success. Agents requested a special bonus for their informant, arguing that his information was of tremendous value, specifically because it led to Hampton's death. If Fred Hampton represented a threat from the streets, John F. Kennedy represented a threat from the very top of the executive suite. By 1963, Kennedy had entered into a state of total war with his own national security bureaucracy. He had vowed to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces after the Bay of Pigs, and was pursuing a back-channel peace with Fidel Castro that many in the agency viewed as virtually treason. When the shots rang out in Dealey Plaza, the official narrative immediately pivoted to the lone gunman theory. But inside the Kennedy family, the realization was instantaneous. They killed him. Robert F. Kennedy, the nation's top lawman, spent the rest of his life in a moral twilight zone, secretly investigating his brother's murder while publicly maintaining a facade of loyalty to the system. The worthy versus unworthy victim. In the propaganda model used to cover up the crime, the state selectively portrays certain victims as worthy of mourning, while others are disappeared or ignored. The media rushed to endorse the lone misfit theory because the alternative, that the state had committed a regime change at home, was a thought so dangerous it would have caused blood in the streets. The wilderness of mirrors. This term, used by counterintelligence chief James Angleton, describes a labyrinth of half-truths where the state manipulates reality to ensnare its critics. For example, while the CIA was planting fake stories that Oswald was a Castro agent, they were simultaneously using human encryption to hide the fact that they had been monitoring Oswald for 3 years prior to the assassination. Critics of this view argue that it is a paranoid distortion of history. However, the shadow archives reveal that high-ranking officials like Richard Helms and James Angleton went to extraordinary lengths to withhold information from the Warren Commission, including the CIA, as sinister alliance with the Mafia to conduct political assassinations. The only time a government official attempted to prosecute a conspirator in the Kennedy case was the 1967 Jim Garrison investigation in New Orleans. Garrison realized that Lee Harvey Oswald was not a Marxist loner, but an agent provocateur working for an anti-Castro intelligence network based at 544 Camp Street, a building shared by a former FBI agent and CIA operatives. The reaction from the state was a sustained campaign of character assassination. If the state cannot kill a critic physically, it kills their reputation. Garrison was labeled a publicity-hungry kook by media assets who were themselves being paid by the CIA to smear him. The odor of mendacity. This is a bureaucratic condition where every data point is altered to present the best possible picture for the institution, even when officials know the underlying reality is a disaster. In Garrison's case, the FBI assigned agents to follow his investigators and eliminate or alter the statements of key witnesses. The sabotage mechanics. Infiltration. The CIA placed at least 9 undercover agents in Garrison's office to steal files and wire the office for sound. Witness intimidation. Witnesses were offered jobs in the CIA or threatened with legal action if they testified. Media control. Journalists who were secret intelligence assets, such as Hugh Ainsworth and James Phelan, were directed to shoot down the investigation on national television. Sabotaging a criminal case from the inside is like breaking the magician's wand. The prosecutor tries to present the truth, but the evidence disappears. The witnesses forget their names, and the audience is told that the whole performance is a fraud. The elimination of domestic critics cannot be understood without looking at the workshop of empire in Latin America. During the 1970s and 80s, the United States practiced outsourcing violence to local death squads in countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, and Argentina. These tactics, refined in the laboratory of counterinsurgency, were eventually brought back home. The same legal constructs that allowed presidents to plot the deaths of foreign leaders, like Fidel Castro, were used to justify the creation of kill lists and disposition matrices that now include American citizens. Phrasing the threat. This is a counterterror technique where the state leaves signals to terrorize a population into submission. In Vietnam, it was a ghostly eye left on a door. In Chicago, it was a police captain announcing on the radio that the next target after Fred Hampton was Bobby Rush. Comparison with other nations. Poland. The use of conspiracy theories to radicalize the public and purge the civil service. Argentina. The disappearing of labor activists by corporate state collusion. The Philippines. The use of manufactured crises to justify the suspension of constitutional rights, rather than a failure of democracy. This is a contested model of sovereignty where the invisible government pulls the wires of the public mind to ensure that certain truths never reach the light of day. The state as ultimate defense against being held accountable for the murder of its critics is the constructive, plausible deniability. This is a system of circuit breakers designed to insulate the Oval Office from scandal by ensuring that orders for executive action are spoken in riddles and never committed to paper. This infrastructure allows a president to say he didn't know, while his subordinates carry out the last resort beyond last resort, assassination. In the case of JFK, the CIA's Richard Helms admitted that he withheld information from his superiors because he felt it was necessary to keep the details restricted to an absolute minimum. The disposition matrix. In the modern era, the kill list has been bureaucratically regularized. Every Tuesday, a president reserved the last word on who will live and who will die, a process where human beings are reduced to targets or nodes in an algorithm. The costs of truth. Dissidents of the old world were hunted for their ideas. Dissidents of the moneyland and the surveillance state are hunted for their segredos, secrets. If you know how the money moves or how the targets are selected, you become number one on the hit parade. Plausible deniability is like a labyrinth with no entrance. You can trace the dead bodies and the illegal orders, but every path leads to a redacted wall or a subordinate who has no recollection of the event. Edward Snowden, perhaps the most famous contemporary critic of the state, realized that the only way to survive a system that kills its critics is to shatter the secrecy that allows it to operate. The shadow archives reveal that while the state can kill the man, it struggles to contain the truth once it is in the hands of a free and unrestrained press. We are at a historic crossroads. The history of Fred Hampton, JFK, and the Garrison case proves that the battlefield is no place for human beings, and yet the state continues to expand that battlefield into our cities and our timelines. The summary execution of the 1960s has evolved into the targeted killing of the 2020s, but the objective remains the same: the preservation of institutional power at all costs. Can a society be truly free when its leaders possess the unwritten right to kill their critics? What happens to the presumption of innocence when a computer code selects the next victim? Is truth and reconciliation possible in a nation that refuses to exhume its most uncomfortable ghosts? A society that kills its critics is like a man who cuts out his own eyes because he doesn't like what he sees in the mirror. He may be free from the sight of his flaws, but he is now stumbling blindly toward a cliff that he can no longer see. But while some were fighting for their lives in the streets, others were fighting for their fortunes in the shadows. In our next episode, we look at the bankers who built a country without borders. Moneyland, the invisible nation.